Alrighty, gang. Here's to nights that turn into mornings and friends that turn into family. Cheers!
Happy birthday to you!
Hello. Welcome to the Friendship IRL podcast. I'm your host, Alex Alexander, and each week we explore what's working and what's not in our friendships, community, and connections. Have you ever wished you could sit down and have a conversation about what is really going on in your friendships? Well, you found your people. Join us as we dive into real-life stories and explore new ways to approach these connections. Together, we're reimagining the rules of friendship. You know what will really put your friendship skills to the test? Moving to a new city. And today's guest has moved to a new city not once, not twice, but 11 times. And with each move, she's built herself new community, connections, friendships, and new friendship skills. My guest today is Leannda Shearer. Leannda is a resilience coach. She is deeply passionate about helping anyone who is overwhelmed, overscheduled, and stuck through one-on-one coaching, group coaching, and her podcast, the Rising with Phoenix Grace podcast. In today's episode, you'll hear Leannda's mindset shift over the years with each move. And then we dive deep into the mindset she has now. The second half of the episode today is full of practical tips and tricks about how to make new friends after you move. But really, I think these tips apply to anyone who's trying to make an impact or a change in their friendships or their community. We talk about everything from joining new groups, and then even how to take those friendships that you've met in the group and hang out with them one-on-one. This is a huge question that so many of you ask me. We talk about what it's like to stay open to new connections as you move through your days and much, much more. I'll stop talking about it. Let's just dive in. Hi, Leannda. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Just another day, another podcast recording. Always so much fun to, get to talk to people and hear their stories.
Absolutely.
And you have one, you and I relate on something, and that is that you actually get excited about meeting new people and making new friends. And you were telling me that part of that is because you've moved a lot of times. How many times?
So in the last 11 years, I've lived in 8 different places.
Oh, honestly, I'm impressed. As I was just saying, I've lived in Seattle pretty much my entire life. And, I talk a lot about how making friends is like a skill set, that there's something really empowering about kind of trusting in your ability to rebuild every time you're in a new situation or in a new place. And it sounds like you feel like you've also, I don't want to say mastered that skill set, but a little bit. Like you can walk into a room and you'll figure it out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's part skill set, and I think it's also part mindset.
So was it always that way? Tell us about like your first couple of moves.
Oh man, the first couple were terrifying. Especially the first one. It was a really big culture shock. I had gone with 3 friends and then soon realized when we all started living together that we weren't as good of friends as I thought we were. So it was definitely a little jarring to be somewhere far away and to not really have the support system that I thought I would have.
Yeah.
But I've worked in the restaurants pretty much my whole life. And so you create a work family. And so that was what I had at first in both places, was just the people that I worked with. And then it started evolving when I started doing more things. Oh, this is my friend over here. Or a big group of my friends when I was in St. Thomas, which was my first move, came from dive boats. I met them out on dive boats. So it just, they came when they were supposed to come. But the first couple times was really, really jarring.
Did you, like the first couple times, so you moved, you're in a new place. Did you know initially that like finding friends and people and community was important? Or I think a lot of people go into those moves, kind of like, it's okay. I'm just going to be alone. I'm going to do life alone. Do you think you went into it kind of with that mindset? Or did you go in, you think, initially knowing the importance of kind of building that for yourself?
Oh yeah, I had no clue. The first two moves was I went to St. Thomas, and then my sister was in Hawaii, and I went to Hawaii. And I just assumed that the people that I knew, like that was going to be it, that it was just going to be us against the world. And so, and then when I moved to Hawaii, it was a lot harder to meet people because it's a much bigger place. And so it was my roommate and the girl next door. And that was like it. So I didn't really catch on to it until the third and the fourth. And then the fifth, I was there for 5 years. So that one really was, I had a community. I had a tribe. So now I know the importance of when I go somewhere that I need that community and I need to build it, and that I can't just rely on what I have.
I love this because it's like a slow build, right? You realized how important this is over time. And I mean, as I've already said, like I moved away for college, but then you go to classes and you meet people and whatnot, right? I've moved home. My closest comparison is like I've had a lot of friends move away. So then I'm left in this place where I need to rebuild instead of kind of accepting this new normal of people being gone. But I love that your story is that you did this the first couple times and really bought into, I think, what society says. Like, you just need a few best people and like they'll kind of be your everything. But I would imagine for quite often, it's a lot of pressure like on you and on them. And that puts a lot of strain on the relationship. So then you started kind of finding some other interests. And then as you moved, you kept seeing how vital this was every time. When you started the fourth and the fifth and the sixth move, when like things started to click in, was it also some sort of realization of like the simpler friendships matter, or people to just do certain things with matter? Or were you still searching for maybe, like that one best friend in every city? Because I think that's something a lot of people do, is look for that one person.
Mine was a mix of both. I found that one person each time, but then I also had, and I hate calling them like surface level friendships because it makes them sound less important than they were. But then there was the people that it was like the go have fun people with. And there was a lot of drunken debauchery. It was my late 20s, so it was this crazy time, and there was those people for that. But each place I went, there was at least one person that, it was me and them. They were my partner in crime for that 4 months or that 6 months. Then I started just having faith. Like, this is how this is going to continue to go, is that a best friend's going to be waiting for me somewhere and other friends are going to be waiting for me somewhere.
Here's the thing about the term surface level friends. Everyone says, oh, that's a surface level friendship. And sometimes they do mean that with like a bad connotation. But sometimes you're talking about a surface level friend. You're like, well, they're kind of a surface level friend, but I really like them. Or I think they have real friend potential. There's always some caveat. And I just led me to this thought that I don't think surface level friends is that great of a term because it has a bad connotation. And there is value in our surface level friendships. So that's why I developed my wheel of connection. Now, if you have been a longtime listener of the podcast, you have probably heard about me talk about this framework before. If it's brand new to you or you need a refresher, you can head to alexalex.link/wheel, and that will take you directly to my website where I have a deep dive on this. But I'm just going to give you a really fast overview. When you're looking at the wheel of connection, it has everything from your formal community, your families, your acquaintances, and then there's something I call your familiar friends, which is a category many of you would call a surface level friend. A familiar friend is somebody that you see out and about in your life. It's like friends of friends or those kind of distant coworkers that you see at the bigger meetings. Perhaps it is somebody that you run into at your kid's school, somebody you talk to at the bus stop. They aren't somebody that is a proactive connection. You don't reach out to them, but you do see them in the places that you go. And when you are spending time with them, you do enjoy that connection. There's also something called defined friends. This category is for anybody that you probably have another name for them. Like they're your running buddy or your gym friend or your spouse's friend's wife. There's some context with which you know them and that's how you see them and normally what you connect about. Now, they might be very surface level. They might not have a lot of depth to this friendship, or they might be somebody like, let's say, your gym friend who knows all about your goals to run a marathon or win a competition. That might be a huge goal of yours right now. Something that you are spending a lot of your time in and out of the gym working towards. And when you're thinking about how supportive this friend is, you start to think like, well, are they my friend? I talked to them about this goal, but are they my friend? I only see them at the gym. And I'm here to tell you, they are your friend. No bad connotation. They are your friend. There's your defined friend. There is also a category called our present friends. This is somebody that you are doing a lot of life with right now. Again, I go deeper into these concepts on my website, but I do want to mention the last type of friend because it's going to come up later in this episode, and that is our historic friends. These are people that at one point you did a lot of life with them, whether they were present friends or defined friends. Like maybe this was your closest work friend for years, but you two don't work together anymore. And therefore, the reasons you stayed connected are kind of dwindling, and you really have to rely on the fact that you care about each other or you miss each other as the reasons that you get together to catch up. Now, there is nothing wrong with a friendship being a historic friendship. In fact, it's quite the opposite. This is just finding a way and a term to really appreciate where those friendships are so you can lean in, understand the differences, and navigate each of these friendships.
I mean, I'm like, that's a lot of faith because people are going to listen to this and be like, I've never experienced that faith before, ever.
Yeah. And I think I have it because I've done it so many times.
Mm-hmm.
And because of the life-changing friendships that I made and those connections. And I still have my core group of friends I'm originally from Boise, Idaho. And I still have my 3 like best friends there that I've known since my freshman year of college. To me, there's a difference between the people who have known you the longest and know all of the stages that you've gone through versus somebody who's meeting you for the first time exactly where you are and moving forward.
There's something beautiful in both.
And they're very different.
Yes.
And so it took me a long time. And I was one up until this time as well that like I didn't really want friendships with women. I was kind of like a guy's girl. And that was the other thing was like having to change my mindset about like, it's okay. It's safe to have women friends. It's good to have women friends. And so it was like this explosion of like women in my life as well. And that gave me a lot of faith because like we're so much stronger together.
Sorry, I'm just so interested. Like 10 moves is so many moves. Obviously, this has been a slow progression. So like at what point in this did you get to the point of kind of almost being excited for the next best friend, the next group, the next, like how many times do you feel like you had to do this before that trust in yourself really felt kind of cemented in?
Until this last time.
So 10 moves.
You know, we moved cross country during 2020, during the summer of 2020. And it took a lot longer to establish a community, but I knew it was coming.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it was really this time that it was like when I left Washington that it was hard. It was still like really hard to
It's
say
hard
bye
every
to people. And, it's excruciating every time. Like I ugly cry for hours and hours. It was like, okay, focus on what's coming next. Like, don't just focus on everyone that you're leaving behind, that you're going to miss. And also like technology has progressed a lot in the last 11 years. Like FaceTime wasn't a thing when I first moved.
Yeah.
It was Skype. I even think Skype was like barely just starting, so it was like technology was not what it was 11 years ago. That makes it so much easier now to like keep in contact as well. So I think it was just this last time, and there was just so much other things going on too that that were out of everyone's control, that it was like, this is what I can control. I can control my mindset, and I can control knowing that I'm going where I'm supposed to be for this time, and that I'm going to meet people. And it was definitely a more of a slow build. I've been here 2.5 years now, and I feel like just now it's really cemented. But that's also because some of the other times it was 6 months, 5 months, 4 months that I was in those places. And that required an amount of like living presently that once you're settled in a place, you kind of lose a little bit of. Because you're like, I got time. But when you're there for just a few months, you're like, I don't have time, and I have to make the absolute most of all of this.
I recorded a podcast episode recently, and somebody said to me, it's like when you move into a rental house and you have two choices. You can either say to yourself, well, I'm only going to be here a year, so what's the point? Or when you move in, you can immediately try and get stuff up on the walls, even if it's not perfect, so that you don't have to live in a lifeless house that doesn't feel like home for that year. Like, what are you going to choose? And some people will choose to just leave their house empty, but you have to make a conscious decision about that. And I think that's so similar to what you're saying versus, if you buy a house and you're going to be there a long time, you might slowly put things on the walls over the course of 3 years.
The episode that I'm referring to is actually out. You can go listen to it right after you finish this one. It is episode 48 with Michelle Reichman. And you can find it in the show notes, or you can just type in friendshipirl.com/episode 48. It'll take you directly to the episode. Now, Michelle, coincidentally or not, is also a military spouse. Shout out to all my military people out there who are on the fast track for learning how to make the community and connections you need each time you move. But in that episode, Michelle talks all about this idea that when she gets somewhere, even if it's only for 1 to 2 years, she's got to put things up on the wall, or she's going to live in an empty house. And she thinks of community and connection the same way. She's got to get herself out there and make some community and some connections as soon as she arrives, no waiting. So in the episode, she talks about how she uses Facebook groups, how she meets up with friends of friends, joining groups, and how she approaches these friendships when she knows they might be picking up their life at any point and moving. Go listen to Michelle and I chat in episode 48.
And that's where I feel like the mindset piece comes into not just being able to talk to people and to cultivate friendships. Like I said, I've worked in the restaurants for, 23 years. Like, I know how to talk to people. That's not my problem, but it's having the mindset of also being like, this is okay, first of all, and that it's going to be okay. And that it's time to make the most out of like where you are. And on the note of the house thing, is being a military spouse, or soon to be ex-military spouse, but is that we also look at it as we're going to have to move in 3 years. So like, do we really need all this extra stuff?
Yeah. So when you say that, is that just like being really intentional about where you're putting your energy and your time with people?
With people, with our space. I think the other thing that comes to with age and security in yourself is, in some ways, the surface level starts to fade away. Like, it's not the same as it was when I was island hopping and partying all the time. There is a quality now that I seek out, and I'm very intentional as I get older of who I give my energy to, who I allow in my energy. So it kind of all ties together with that.
Yeah. It's kind of like taking the time to really think about what you're doing before you do it all the time. Versus I think a lot of people are walking through their friendships without any thought. They're just repeating patterns or doing what they feel like they should do. And then waking up one day wondering how they got here, whether that is in friendships that don't feel right or in like incredibly lonely, whatever it is. It could be any number of things. It's quite often because there were like little day-to-day things that they never checked in on. They just kept mindlessly marching forward. So I love that analogy. And you said something too about when you move, getting to meet new people who don't know you, who like you get to be the present version of you without any history or past. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? Because that overlaps with something I say all the time. And I love that you brought that up.
Yes. I wasn't able to put it into words like that until a few months ago. I had connected with a woman in an online space and through a course we were both taking. And we, over the last, I think it's been 7 months now, we literally talk all day, every day. We voice memo back and forth all day, every day. And the course that we were part of was basically sending each other a message every morning saying like what we were grateful for, how our day was going to go, and like some future desires that we had. And so from the get-go, it was, this is me right now, and this is what I want for my future. This is the me that I want to be. And it's just created this whole other dynamic of not having any of the things of like, friendships from the past of being like, oh, well, I don't, you've never done that before, like, are you sure, and then having this person that is just like, yes, you can do whatever you want because I know you right now and I know you can. And this is, and that's what our base is. It's only, I mean, we talk about our past, of course we do, it comes into play, but I think for me, it was that I also got to then recreate my identity with it as well, because I didn't have to be Leannda who was bullied in high school and lost her dad and then went to college, and it was like, then I was an island girl and, and then that skin shed off of me. And then I was a mom. And then, so my friend now is like, we meet each other exactly where we are. And it's just incredibly powerful.
I've been thinking a lot about this. Actually, it's funny we're talking about this because I am also in a group with women working on like keynote speeches. And one of the gals was saying that she is really nervous to like tell her friends and family she's doing this program. She works like a corporate job. Her keynotes don't relate to that. And the imposter syndrome comes in. Who is she to be doing this? All this stuff. And at a certain point, I kind of piped in and I was like, well, I just want you to know that to me, you're a keynote speaker. I know nothing different. I've seen all the work you've done. I believe you can do this. And I have no other information to tell me otherwise, right? Like if she's tried to do this 4 times and failed, which is something other friends would know, exactly what you're saying. They're going to be like, well, you've tried this before. Is it going to work this time? I don't have any of that information. And there's like something so valuable about that. And I don't think we're talking enough about how valuable that is because there's so much weight put on the history and the length of time we've known someone. And that's beautiful too. Don't get me wrong, but it's all valuable.
Absolutely.
One's not more valuable than the other necessarily. I mean, maybe in a certain moment it is, right? If I'm going after a goal, that new friend might be more valuable in that.
I was watching a video with Jay Shetty the other day, and he was talking about that we often celebrate the length of relationships. And I believe he was talking in the context of like marriage, but it works for friendships as well. But we don't necessarily celebrate the quality, that it's really admirable to have a friend that you've known for 20 years, which I do have some, luckily, but, rather than My mom would always struggle with that. Like when I'd get a new best friend when I traveled, and she's like, well, you barely know them. And I'm like, and like, I know enough, So it's like people want that, it's comfortable, that stability of time and experiences shared. But I met these people in Las Vegas on New Year's 13, 14 years ago. I'm still Facebook friends with one. We still talk all the time. We spent 4 hours together. And to me, that night was no less magical than a New Year's that I spent with all of the people that I'd known for years.
Yeah.
I also feel like if people don't experience it though, like I've had friends that have a core group of friends from like high school. And then I came in college and I was never quite part of it because that was what was really important to them. But it's also because they never left. They never, went and experienced anything else. So I feel like it's really easy for people who haven't experienced that or are willing to experience it to just completely not understand it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a huge piece of honestly doing this podcast is a lot of talk about friendship is that it's hard and elusive and rare and hold on tight if you find it. And I think a big piece of that is like, we're just not talking about it. If the story's more normal, then it wouldn't seem so rare and elusive, but we're just not sharing the stories. So you're exactly right. If we talked more, even if they haven't experienced it, if it was even more part of the mainstream conversation, maybe they have experienced and they didn't even see the value in it because they've never thought about it that way. They've never heard a story about it. And then we're walking around. I mean, I firmly believe we're walking down the street missing 90% of the connections. You might walk right by your next best friend, your next closest person, the next person that helps you with that goal. We're missing 90% of it because we're so laser focused on like this one definition of what a friend is and what's valuable.
Or like how they have to fit specifically into your life or
they have to encompass your entire life. They have to be perfect for all of it.
Yep. Be there for everything. And yep.
And then anything that doesn't hit this very narrow definition or hold like that peak moment of friendship forever is just forget about it. Throw it aside.
And it doesn't take into account like just how like we're all different beings in our own way and we all have different needs. And that somebody might, some of my most dear friends, we talk every 2-3 months and there might be a text in between and that's, and there's no doubting and there's no questioning our friendship. And then my other friend, I literally talk to her every single day, and it's like, it's also what works with, we have similar schedules. And so it allows us to do that, where the other ones are in different time zones and have different jobs. And so it's like, I've also had to let go of a lot of what I thought made a perfect friend. Like you don't always have to be available to them. I don't have to be available to them to know that like, if I needed them, if I text them like, hey, I need you, like there's going to be a call, but it took a lot for me. And I think this also comes with maturity and security and things you learn as you get older too, is that it's okay to have different dynamics with different people. And that also doesn't make your friendship any less special or any less valuable. It is what works for your friendship.
Yeah, it's not a one size fits all. You can't do some checklist that they all have to make.
No.
I really think you need to look at each one and instead of being so focused on what isn't there, focusing on what is there. Like, is that enough? Does that feel right in a certain area of your life? Because if you can't find the what is enough, you're not going to invest any more energy, time into developing it any further. So all the focus on what isn't there, like that's not leading you towards any better of a friendship.
Nope.
It's only holding you back.
And there's the mindset piece of it again.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of mindset. I think a lot of people come from, right? We all want to be liked. We want to belong. We want to fit in. So when you talk about friendship, there's, I think, oftentimes a lot of focus on like everybody else. And we're not what you're saying about the age and maturity and like the self-assuredness. A huge piece is honestly just starting with yourself. Like, what do you want? What do you enjoy in other people? what do you bring to relationships? And that helps you, I think, filter when you're out in the world instead of walking around just looking for anybody who is going to give you attention. That would be overwhelming. I get why people are overwhelmed trying to make new friends if you don't have any filters. You're just walking around like, oh, well, that person's nice and that person's nice. And they said hi to me. Like, do you even have the same interests? Do you have a fun conversation? Not to say you have to have all the same interests as somebody, but like, I think people need to start with themselves instead of being so focused on what everyone else is doing.
Absolutely. And it's like, I see also like the flip side of that is, I don't know if you've read a lot of Louise Hay's work.
No, but I'm going to look her up now.
She talks a lot about positive mindset. And one of her beliefs is also like, if somebody is doing something that's a quality that you don't necessarily like, for you to then go, where am I doing that in my life?
Mm-hmm.
And use them as like a mirror as well. So like if you have a friend that is always running late and it drives you crazy, to be human about it too and be like, oh, well, I also sometimes like run late.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, it's like having those filters
yes.
too of like, not just like, what do I need and what do I want? But what am I, like you said, what am I bringing to the table? Honestly, you know,
the good and the bad, not even bad, but like authentic, real, raw, human, messy.
Yep.
Because I think you're totally right. You know, we're so focused maybe on what we want everybody else to be around us. And then we're not even thinking about how we are showing up ourselves. Like, we're not perfect either. I'm definitely not perfect.
No, far from it. Me, I mean, not you.
No, it's okay. We can just accept each other's imperfections. But I think the things we really love about someone eventually are those imperfections and their quirks and the things that make them them and not just a cookie cutter fit in the box. Like the things that we watch our friends do, and to the rest of the world, they might be like, here's a great example. One of my closest friends, she's going to listen to this. I joke that she's a tough nut to crack. Like, she's kind of, people meet her for the first time a little bit and she's a little standoffish. She's kind of quiet. But the thing is, when you do get her to crack, she's one of the most loyal friends. She's so thoughtful. She would, as my other friend Patrice says, she would drag a body for me.
The Pacific Northwest is a great place for that.
Yeah. But, you know, to everybody else, it's something that maybe they look at her, or she, you know, like, oh, she's pretty quiet and it's kind of hard to get her to join in the conversation. But to me, I'm like, that's who she is. And it's just takes her a minute to warm up. And like, when you get in there though, she's one of the sweetest people. And that's what I love about her. So I think those are the kind of things that eventually people love about us, even if initially we feel like we don't fit in.
No, I completely agree. And that reminds me of my mom used to always say, still water runs deep. Like those quiet. I had one of those friends, and I am not a quiet person, obviously. And she was very quiet at first and very reserved and shy. And I was just like, she doesn't like me. You know, I had her over one night, and then she sent me a text when she got home. She's like, I had such a great time tonight. And I was just like, did you? And then she, you know, same thing. It took me a good 6 months. And I always joke with her that I'm like, you're my last shy friend. Like, I can't, like, I gave everything into you, you know? And then I have another friend who, like, she can talk to a brick wall. Like, that's what she always says. Like, she's that person that goes in and can make everybody feel so warm and so welcome. And so I think those other things too, is they also become the things that we admire about them and that we want to be like them. Like, I have a friend that's always positive. Like, she's a happy, I don't know, she drinks unicorn powder or something, but she's always happy. And like, but when I'm around her, I'm like, I want to be like that. And I've been told other things that like people admire about me. And so I think but you got to just give yourself a chance to also like love people to get to that good stuff sometimes. And we're in such a society that we want everything right now. And some friendships do happen like that instantaneous. When I moved to Nantucket for the summer, a girl and I spent an afternoon together, and we were best friends for almost a decade. But there's other ones that are a slow burn, and you got to put the effort in and you got to make it work. And so it's such a good reminder in this time of where we want everything and we want it right now, to also be some things take time, and that's okay too.
So when you're moving and trusting that you can do this and whatnot, friendship, connections, community, whatever, is a 2-person thing. So when you're going into it with your goal, your mindset of, I'm going to build this community, I'm going to make what I need, I'm going to meet the right people, how do you approach it when somebody else doesn't have the same goal? Do you get what I'm saying? When there's some resistance, or they're this is hard, this can't be possible, I don't really know if I want new friends right now. I think this happens to certain people that listen to the podcast, where we've decided that we're going to take control over this area of our lives, and we're putting the energy and the effort in, and not everyone's doing that. And then that feels like a huge barrier to people. Do you have any thoughts or tips or tricks or ways you approach that?
I feel because of all of my experiences, I have this belief of what's made for me won't miss me. And I feel that's kind of, if I meet somebody who doesn't reciprocate the, let's call invitation for friendship, is that, first of all, we have no idea, especially when we first meet somebody, what is going on in their lives and why that might feel really overwhelming, or why they're just not able to do that right now. And so I think that it's taught me grace and patience with people, of being if they're meant to be in my life, they'll be in my life. And then to also just kind of keep the door open, to keep that door, if you're thinking about send them a text, or if you see them at an event. I'm previous military spouse, so they have, events all the time. And it's make sure to say hi and comment on their social media, or, whatever it is. But just know that if you were supposed to be friends, you'll be friends. And give them the permission and the grace. And then also be reminded, kind of I was saying earlier, of being when was a time that I did that? That somebody reached out to me and I wasn't in a place to pursue that friendship.
Yeah, it sounds to me how that hits me is, one, just trusting that there are enough people out there and that you will meet the right people, and not being not the scarcity mindset of friendship is hard and whatnot. If you had some instantaneous connection with somebody and they're just not reciprocating, that's okay. Maybe they'll come back. Maybe they'll move on. You'll continue to go out in the world and meet people, and certain people will fall in your life. And 2, a little bit of a leadership aspect, right? Of, I'm going to keep doing this thing that I need. And that's okay if I have the vulnerability to keep the door open. Maybe it takes them a little bit of time to realize this is something they'd be interested in, instead of shutting them off after the first interaction that maybe didn't go well, saying yeah, okay, nice to see you again. I love that. I think that is honestly not what a lot of people are doing.
I think we just always take it so personal. Again, with the age and the being secure in yourself and everything, that's when you start to realize that everyone has lives and other things that they're going through, and to hold a little space for that. Because even if it's your good friend and she knows everything you're going through, there's still part that she might not know.
Well, yeah, they can never.
Yeah.
They never know all the thoughts that are going through your head. They only know what you choose to share them. Are you really sharing 100%? No.
Yeah. Or maybe you just didn't sleep well the night before, or I have a small child, she got me up 6 times, or I'm overstimulated for the day, or, it's just, people take it personal. Oh, they didn't like me.
Yeah. Yeah. And quite often it has nothing to do with you.
Yeah. 90% of the time.
Okay. So if you were to move again, what are some things you do? How do you pick where to put yourself out there? Do you have any tips, tricks, thoughts?
Yeah. So I really love meetup.com.
Okay.
I've met quite a few friends on there. something here that's really helped is women networking nights for a magazine that I actually write for. So I've met, oh my gosh, through that, I've met, oh my gosh, I don't know, 15, 20 people through that. So like networking nights, and then things that I enjoy doing, if it's a book club, or I'm hoping to get back into golf this summer, or just being at the beach, mom groups.
Mhm.
There's also like a mom friend app. It's like kind of like a dating app, but for moms.
Peanut?
It's called Peanut. Yep. And even like certain dating apps now have friendship, like Bumble has a friendship thing on there. So I feel like it's, again, this time that we're living in is it doesn't just have to be, like going to a grocery store and hoping that you see somebody who looks cool to like talk to. Like you can kind of preemptively kind of plan. And the thing is too, like, even though I won't be an official military spouse when I do move again, like there'll be a military group page. And so like I always get on those as soon as I know where I'm going next and introduce myself and say like, I got a kid and we love the beach. And I mean, Facebook groups are a great place. I do love Meetup because then you can choose things on like, there's board games and there's hiking and there's comedy and, whatever your interests are. And so then you know that you already have that one thing that you can start a conversation about with somebody.
When you look for these, like you're obviously looking for things that are an interest where you actually want to go do the thing, and people, like you said, hiking, you have something you can talk about with them, like an immediate thing is comfortable to discuss. Do you tend to look for things that are like repetitive? Like how do you create the consistency to get to know someone when you meet them? Do you just invite them out for coffee or to the beach immediately? How do you approach kind of like taking it outside that group?
Yeah, there's definitely no consistency. I do feel like every single thing that I've done in a group setting has led to outside of that group. So the first networking event that I did with this magazine, these two women approached me and we sat down and started talking, and they brought another girl into the fold. And my birthday happened to be 2 weeks from that. And so I was like, come to my birthday dinner. And so then they came, and then they met my other friends that were there, and now they've made other connections. And so I feel like that is what it turns into, is like, oh, we have a connection. Like, I'm going to get your phone number and let's go get coffee or go for a walk or, do something to see if there's more of a,
more for us to talk about.
If there's more of a spark.
It is like dating. It is like dating.
It's so much like dating.
And we're not talking about that enough, because I think, a lot of people think, right, they kind of like make their initial friends, they meet a romantic partner, they do the dating, and then at a certain point in life, you're just done. You don't have to do this anymore. You don't have to put yourself in these uncomfortable situations and meet new people. And that's not the reality. It is like dating. You're so right.
Especially if you're going through a divorce.
Yeah. And then you have that too.
And like the talking about like loving yourself first. And like when you were talking about that earlier, I was like, oh, this is the conversation I literally had last night with my friend about dating. Because it's like you have to love who you are in order to attract the kind of people that you want to attract to you. Because if not, then you're going to keep attracting people who aren't good for you. One of my favorite quotes and reminders that I give myself is, you become who you spend time with.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to be honest. I don't love the, like, you have to love yourself first, because then the goal is for people to get there. But if you don't love yourself, there's this myth, like, to be successful, we have to like self-care our way out of it. We're successful if we can fix all of our problems. And sometimes we just need to go out and be with people, because you might kind of be in your head too much. And if you went out there and interacting with some people, right, they might tell you some things they love about you that you've never realized you love about yourself. And like, you might find out new things. So I think that's the goal. But I guess I'm trying to say, if you're listening to this, just go out in the world. Don't wait for that. Don't wait for that.
And maybe not like, and I'm going to rephrase that, like not love yourself first, but like know yourself.
Yeah.
Like know what you want.
Yes. Yes, I love that. Right. Be curious about yourself.
Because people do. I mean, that's the whole reason of meeting people and having friendships, is because like you learn something either about them, about the world, but like most importantly, like about yourself. And I have this very ingrained belief as well that loving people makes us strong, not the other way around.
As in not being loved
Not-
by people?
Not that people loving us makes us strong, but that us loving people is what actually gives us strength.
I love that a lot. I love that a lot. I'm probably going to use that. It just makes me think, right? Like so many people are scared to put themselves out there because what if they lose it all? It's like the reason you mentioned earlier, like losing your dad. I don't know when that happened to you. I lost my mom when I was younger, right? Like grief is quite often all the love.
All the unexpressed love.
All the unexpressed love. And if you didn't have that in the first place, you have nothing to lose. But then you wouldn't have all the beauty of all that love you did have. And so not putting yourself out there in friendship or in whatever, it's like losing out on all that possible love you could have, even if it's just for a period of time.
That's why as excruciating as those goodbye days are, I call them see you later days. Like I wouldn't trade all of the time that came before those days. The reason that it makes it so hard. I think, isn't there like the Winnie the Pooh quote that's like, how lucky am I to have something that saying goodbye is so hard? I don't know where I'm pulling all these quotes out from today, but yeah, that's my thing though, is it's like, I might never see 90% of those people from all of the different places that I live, but I wouldn't do it any differently. And I wouldn't trade my time with them.
And you're not going to stop.
No, I can't stop.
Like that's the interesting thing. There's still so much life left for both of us. There's still so many people out there to meet and to love and to have a see you later day with. And that doesn't end. Somebody said to me recently, we only stop making meaningful relationships in the grave. And I love it. That just gave me the chills a little bit because I do think that sometimes we feel like we collect those people early in life and they're just our people and that's it. And if we've missed the boat or we've moved on or we've become different people, that we've like lost out. But if we walk through our days remembering that we only stop collecting meaningful relationships in our grave, then isn't that just like so much more empowering that we're not done? We didn't, miss something, or we don't have to continue to force things that don't feel right anymore. We can allow ourselves to like keep building what feels right with each new iteration of our life.
Oh, I love that. That's good.
Well, I'm going to use that one too, because now that we've beta tested it on a population of 1. Yeah, but it's so true. It goes back to the thing you were saying about the length of time in our relationships is quite often, I think, when we talk about friendships, when we're just in casual conversation, like if I were to tell you about that friend I was talking about earlier, the one that's, tough nut to crack, it'd be like, okay, well, we've been friends for, I don't even know, 16 years. We've been friends for 16 years. Like, oh, that friend that we've been friends since we were 5. Somehow that is like the marker we're all saying to each other. But when you actually talk about these friendships, we're not talking about, the period for 6 months where we didn't talk or where it was really hard or how it just doesn't feel right anymore. None of that is the way we're talking about our relationships, and it's doing a major disservice.
And I feel like it's kind of the same thing with like it reminds me of like setting a goal, basically. You have to do this one thing to get this one goal. And if you don't do it, then you didn't do your goal. There's no room for the human experience or to be present. It's all like, this is the only way that it's a good friendship or a good relationship or, and you're right. Like we need to be encompassing more of the people who don't maybe stay as long in our lives, but that doesn't make them any less important than the people who have been there for 16 years.
And those might be beautiful too.
They are, yeah.
It's all there. But the current definitions really make it seem like there's just this like narrow window of what's meaningful, valuable, impactful in our lives. And if it doesn't fit in that, then like not worth it. And it's costing us so many relationships.
Even to me, it's that like people have to be, even those older friendships, that they have to be willing to grow with you like the ones that I still have, they have accepted me through every stage that I've gone through and every new version of me that I have created. Whereas there used to be a lot more of them. I had a very close friend who flat out looked at me one day and was like, I don't understand what you're doing. I don't know why you're moving around. Why aren't you happy here? And our friendship eventually faded away because he wasn't willing to adapt what his version of friendship was. And so I think like that's the thing too, is like, if you have those relationships that have been around for a long time, like to be able to like look at them and be like, am I doing this because I'm still connected and I still really love this person and they love me and they see me? Or am I doing this so I can tell somebody I've been friends with this person for 20 years?
Yes. Since we're really deep in the quotes, I just pulled this up because I don't want to get it wrong. This is actually my favorite quote of all time, and we're just going to run with this theme today. It's by an author, Heidi, I think Preby. I will figure out how to pronounce her last name. But the quote is, to love someone long-term is to attend 1,000 funerals of the people they used to be. My favorite quote of all time. Because you might have been friends with somebody for 20 years, but what we're not talking about is that there were 100 versions of each of you, and that you're really not the same friends you were a decade ago or 2 decades ago. So, while it's beautiful to have friendships of 20 years, you probably built a new friendship basically within like the last year when life changes happen. So why can't you do that with new people you meet in these current moments in your life? And if you think about it that way, then as life changes happen and you're moving and you're going somewhere, you're like, well, I'm doing the same thing anyways. It really is repeating kind of the same pattern. You just have more information for that long-term friend, and you have to find new information about this new friend, but it's really the same thing.
And then just building on everything I've learned and keep learning and doing it again.
I want to close this out and ask if you've had a similar experience. I think that a healthy support system is the ultimate self-care. And a lot of societal messages tell us, right, that like we're given a certain support system and this is what it is. And I think it's really empowering to realize you can build that for yourself. And there are only so many people I meet who I think have had this aha moment of, I've done this before. And if everything fell away, all these people, my entire support system, like I could do it again. Would it look different? Yes. Would it be hard? Absolutely. But like I could do this again. And I think that there's something so powerful for a person to realize they can do that they have the skills, that they see the importance, that they would do that again and again. And there's only so many people I've talked to that I think have had that moment. And it kind of sounds like you have. Do you feel like this is a skill set or a superpower you have, that as you move through life, you can build what you need over and over and over again, if that's what you had to do?
Yeah. I'm actually changing my name to Phoenix in a couple of months.
Oh my gosh,
for that very reason, because I've just had to rebuild. And not just, some has been my choice.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it has not been. But that was something that when my husband and I decided to no longer be together, that was something that had kept me stuck for a really long time.
Mm-hmm.
Was, especially, I've also lost my mother and his mom. I'm very close to his mom and his sister and his family,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and I was like, I'm closer to them than I am to my family, except my big brother. And so I'm like, I'm going to have to create a whole new family.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really daunting. And I mean, things are changing and evolving and, you know, we're working through it and whatever, but like, it was really scary at first. And then that same voice in my head or my intuition, you know, kicks in and goes, well, you did it once.
Mm-hmm.
You'll do it again. Like you'll create a new family again. Doesn't mean it's not hard. Like you said, doesn't mean it's not super scary, but there is no shortage of people for us to love.
Yeah. And I think that there's something when you have that moment, I mean, it's freeing, right? Like that can't be a limiting factor anymore, especially for so many people in romantic relationships of any kind who are scared to move on because society repeatedly is like, this is your person for everything. To realize you can build that, and not even necessarily with one other person, but like with a community of people around you, gives people the freedom to leave relationships that aren't serving them, or move places, or step into new roles in their life. Because you can build what you need. That doesn't need to be a factor that holds you back anymore.
It's a freedom of literally creating the exact life that you want.
I couldn't agree more. I'm just so happy you were here today. I think that, like I said, like sharing these stories and having people hear that it took you multiple times of doing this. But like, it's not comfortable for a while. Even when you trust yourself to do it, it's still not comfortable. But that it's so powerful when you like get to this point, when you repeatedly do it enough to trust yourself that you can do it again. It's just like anything else in your life.
Yep. It's a skill.
It's a skill. It's a skill, which is a great way to end this, because so many people, when I say that, are shocked that I say it's a skill, but it is. It's a skill, and we can all develop this skill. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate your time and your vulnerability to share. I'm really excited for people to hear this episode.
Thank you so much for having me. Yes, I love what you're doing. And yeah, let's have more conversations. Everybody, like, talk about it.
Agreed. Talk about it.
If you feel like this episode was a lot, I want to give you a big hug and tell you, you are correct. The thing is, we could have kept chatting for a long time. Something happens in episodes like this where when we just kind of like weave in and out of this deeper thought process into more practical tips and then into stories, so much is happening. I never know what everybody's takeaway is going to be. And there's always this reoccurring theme where so many of you start sending me messages or emails or voice memos with the littlest phrases or nuggets or tips. Ones that maybe just flew right over my head. I didn't even notice them, but you message me and you're like, this was a complete shift for me. This changed everything. This was huge. I think about an aspect of friendship completely differently. And it's so fun to hear what your takeaways are. I can't wait to see what everyone digs out of this episode. Because in this episode, I feel like whatever you find is like finding a single grain of sand on the beach. There is so much to sift through. But I am really, really, really excited to hear what resonated with you. Thank you for listening to this episode of Friendship IRL. I am so honored to have these conversations with you, but don't let the chat die here. Send me a voice message. I created a special website just to chat with you. You can find it at alex.chat. You can also find me on Instagram. My handle @itsAlexAlexander. Or go ahead and leave a review wherever you prefer to listen to podcasts. Now, if you want to take this conversation a step further, send this episode to a friend. Tell them you found it interesting and use what we just talked about as a conversation starter the next time you and your friend hang out. No need for a teary goodbye. I'll be back with a new episode next week.